I mean, all the candidates always come out saying they're going to keep it a clean campaign. No one admits, and it's always a media issue when they go to attack ads. Yeah. But these seem to have a life of their own. And when the media is accused of this, they always say that, well, you know, violence on TV or sexuality or whatever, we're giving the public what they want. Do you think the public has the stomach, the attention span to deal with real issues and make their decisions based on that?
I'll tell you a good judgment on that. The last debates between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have been, I think, excellent debates. Yeah. And I think people responded well. I mean, everybody that I talked to that had watched them thought they were terrific, and that's at some town meetings that we had and things of that nature, so pretty good cross-section of people. What I did think was amusing was the struggle that the commentators had trying to draw them into a battle between each other. Right. It seemed like, you know, the folks who were spending half of their time trying to get them to take a punch at the other, and neither of them were having it, and consequently stayed on a pretty high plane. The issues, one of the announcers complained one time that they spent 17 minutes on health care. What's wrong with that? You know, it's not 30 seconds and slamming each other in the nose and moving on or whatever. 17 minutes in healthcare is probably about right, considering the way it's impacting people's lives and businesses' lives and things of that nature. So, you know, I think that, you know, people are ready for a good, honest debate that gets off of that stuff. Will the media let them, or will they always be looking for the horse race and the fight? Yeah.
I want to move on to some broader issues now. Sure. You're on the Committee of Oversight and Government Reform. Right. On the Subcommittee of National Security and Foreign Affairs, and personally I think National Security and Foreign Affairs could use some oversight and
we think so too. We think they were probably without it since 2001 until we got the majority in 2007, so it's been instructive.
Yeah, and I know you voted against the war authorization. You've been a vocal critic of the war from the beginning. Where do you think we are now? A lot of the candidates are saying we can't do anything about the war, it's irresponsible to pull out, and so you're sort of in a double bind. How do you think this should be handled?
Well, I don't think it's irresponsible to pull out. I think nobody that I know is advocated for pulling out tomorrow. Like, just everybody turn on their heel and start running. It wouldn't be feasible to do, it'd be dangerous for our troops, and it would leave the area unstable. I think the debate really is, do you want to stay in indefinitely? You know, John McCain has stayed 100 years or whatever on that basis. Or do you want to say, we're going to tell that nation and the surrounding nations that we're not here forever. You know, we've come in, we've got rid of Hussein, we've you know, given you an opportunity to put a government together. You know exactly what you need to do in terms of the oil revenues division, the local elections, and all of that. You're going to do it or you're not. Apparently, you haven't wanted to do those political changes, even with the surge so far. So we're going to be out of here within a reasonable period of time. Most of our military people tell us that we could responsibly redeploy our troops from Iraq in about a year. You know, and that's leaving some equipment behind that's not really relevant or important to us, but taking most of the stuff that's very expensive that we can reuse that's important to us, and getting our troops out safely. In that period of time, you have to engage the people in Iraq and the people surrounding Iraq, because none of them have an interest in it becoming even more unstable than it is now. And as long as we're there and not engaging them, they're happy to see us suffer the casualties, us suffer the injuries, us suffer the economic consequences, and then play around with it a little bit. They all have their respective interest inside that they tweet here and there to cause difficulties. We've got to engage them in a plan that allows that area to be stable as we move out. It's going to mean in part talking to Iran, which is something this administration is loath to do. You know, Iran's not a bunch of good players, but either was the USSR. And all during the Cold War, we talked to them on a regular basis. We talked to China before Nixon went to China.
You know, we talked to Pinochet.
And it's not a responsible position to say we're just not going to talk, because you know they are a player in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iraq, in that whole region, and even in the Palestinian-Israeli situation. So you're going to have to start working on that. Redeploy your troops out of there. You have some real issues down in Afghanistan and Pakistan that are terror-related, where the incidents were planned that struck the United States. We have to help Pakistan and Afghanistan be able to take on what to them is an existential threat as well. You know, it doesn't mean putting in our troops to 160,000 troops and 180,000 contractors like we did in Iraq. It means strengthening their police and strengthening their security and helping them with economic development so people don't want to join those forces, and working militarily to get those people that are never going to change. The ones that are really bad, people that are just not going to convert, they have to be located, arrested, or taken care of, whatever is required, and move on. And we're going to have to get a model to do that wherever terror may erupt, because the model is not a huge military footprint. We don't have those kind of resources on that.
Do you think there's the political will in Congress to exercise the power of the purse to put an end to this thing? I know you've demonstrated that.
We've demonstrated on a regular basis. I think there is, with the right leadership. I think right now the White House is stopping that. We have an incredible process in this country where everybody uses slogans and calls everybody who wants to disagree with them weak on defense, and that, and it apparently some members think it resonates in their districts, and maybe it does. I mean, I'm always concerned that some people here will fall into that trap, but I don't think it should stop you from doing what you think is right, on that. I think generally with the right leadership, then people will understand. Once we started talking about what was going on in Iraq truthfully, the whole nation's attitude changed. You know, so originally everybody got sort of stampeded in there because we were being sold a bill of goods, and once people started pushing back and say, wait a minute, let's look at the facts. And we had to repeat the facts for a while. We had to show that they were true, but eventually it meant that people said, well, this is crazy. And now it's crazy to the tune of $12 billion a month, almost 4,000 deaths, 40,000 injured, and no political change by the parties in Iraq. They still continue to fight and squabble and carry on.
That's a nice segue into my next question, actually.
Fighting and squabbling and carrying on?
Yeah, kind of. I was thinking accountability. Obviously, in 2006, a Democratic majority, people voting for change. I know you're strong on accountability and very vocal about it, and I respect you for that. Shortly after the beginning of the session, though, Nancy Pelosi said she was taking impeachment off the table. And a student asked me the other day, why did we impeach Bill Clinton for checking his files in the Oval Office? Well, what seemed to certainly surpass high crimes and misdemeanors by any definition are not being held to account. Do you think it's is it political suicide to try to impeach the president or the vice president or both for the lead up to the war, especially, and you know, illegal surveillance? I can understand why the president's interested in retroactive immunity for telecom companies and other people, but shouldn't there be some standard of accountability? Definitely,
there should be, and I don't think people should get the feeling that nothing is being done in that vein. Unfortunately, this administration has been incredibly prolific in the use of classification. You know, everything is classified, and we have a number of hearings going on now in the Intelligence Committee. I happen to be a member of that select committee. A number of hearings told us you can't talk about them. You know, very cleverly, once you're there and it's classified, you're dealing with all these investigations, and I can't sit here and tell you, Michael, exactly what's going on. So that would leave the public, that would leave the public rightfully thinking, well, what the heck, nothing's going on. You know, that's not the case, but it unfortunately looks that way, and I understand how it does. The Judiciary Committee with John Conyers, he has in front of him the impeachment for Cheney aspect, and he's doing investigations on that. Currently, he's subpoenaed in witnesses, and the White House has resisted, and they're going to court. So it's a drag your feet until you get there on the way out. And before you impeach, I think the Speaker Pelosi's thought was, you know, you got to have hard evidence. We all feel the way you feel, and then people feel that these guys have done some really bad things, and we can surmise how they got there and do it. But when it comes to impeachment, actually, if you're responsible, you actually have to put the hard, cold evidence in. And that's what the investigations are doing in the Intelligence Committee and the Judiciary Committee, and the White House, of course, is trying to drag it, you know, to the other side of the elections and hope they get out. So that said, I think on top of that, there's a political consideration as well. I mean, I think that, you know, it would be disingenuous to say there was no political overtone to this. I think that the Speaker probably looked and said, look, given all that, these guys are going to drag their feet, and it's going to be hard to get at the evidence because of the classification and everything. We're going to disrupt the country in a pretty conclusive way by having these proceedings, and then what are we going to do about all the issues that are confronting us right now? That wasn't an issue at the time, but the mortgage foreclosure would be one now. How are we going to get people to agree and attend to resolving that? The education issues, the health care, all of those things as you go on. And I don't know whether she considered the implications going into the presidential election or not. I don't know which way it would play, but she may have done that too. She's a pretty smart political person on that. But I think that, you know, people just want, and this Democrats, Republicans, they want this administration to be over. You know, even my Republican colleagues, it's like a cinder block tied around their ankle and thrown in the ocean. They just want it to be over. And whenever I travel on business overseas, I mean, people just look at us and shake their head and say, like, when are you going to, no matter who else you put in, when are you going to get on the other side of this?